all thank Dr. Sabu for another opportunity to discuss with you all. This time it's about a crisis which is building up in India over the last few years, and it pertains to a socio-technical issue. We have witnessed a steady growth of digital applications the last 20 years, 2 decades. Initially, it was a communication and entertainment systems, and then slowly it went into healthcare, agriculture, education, travel and tourism, etc., etc. So there has been a proliferation of digital applications. And this led to induction of a lot of digital electronic equipment. So which became a part of our life, be it at home, be it in office, be it in your institution, wherever you are, you had a whole lot of electronic equipment which was helping you with these applications. On top of it, the government's Digital India program has spread over almost the length and breadth of the country, with over 100 crore people participating in this Digital India program. And this digital equipment has reached even the remotest parts of rural India. So you have today electronic equipment being used in both rural as well as urban India. Of course, the intensity is more in urban areas. So it's a topic which is of interest and relevance to almost all the people who are the users of electronic equipment. And another aspect, very important, another aspect is there have been huge advancements in design and production of electronic equipment. Electronic equipment has become speedier, has become more versatile, and it's become compact. So all these features of speed and versatility and compactness have made them hugely appealing to the customer. And therefore, the customer is tempted to buy a recent model for the same functions which were being met by an earlier version, maybe slightly less efficient, but this was one of the problems. So all this put together created a situation for customer to have an option to change his electronic equipment. And when he changes electronic equipment, the old one, of course, he kept it with him for some time and then he disposed it off in some manner. It could either go to the gray market, which will find another consumer later, or it can go to the scrap yard. Now, when it goes to the scrap yard, then the challenges are different, because this destination for electronic equipment, which is going to scrap centers, is troublesome for us and is fraught with environmental issues, primarily because electronic equipment have hazardous material and pollutants in them, harmful pollutants in them. Now, this calls for a very disciplined process of disposal by the customers or the people undertaking the job of scrapping the equipment. The vulnerability of the water and air in our environment against e-waste disposal requires to be managed by a slew of measures which have to be run by authorities, be it state government or central government. They have to run it as per a technically relevant, controlled set of measures. And of course, they have to fit into the legal environment as well. So we are going to discuss these issues today. Apart from that, we also need to sensitize our population to be aware of this situation, because each one of them is the owner of an electronic equipment which will get at some day or other will become a waste. So they have a huge role to play in the e-waste management. And they also need to be made to understand if they can minimize the amount of electronic equipment. That's one way of managing the quantity of waste they will generate. So I'm going to give you a very short presentation, maybe in the next 30 minutes or 35 minutes. And I will just upload my PPT. Are you able to see the
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
See the presentation?
Yes, sir. Yes.
So I have said it's a looming crisis for India, because when you look at the numbers, which we will be seeing in our presentation, you may agree with me that it's a crisis which is slipping out of our hands. So this picture is very clear to everyone. There's a TV, of course, it's a very old TV. There's some laptop which are looking recently bought, some music system, all this. You will see that there are many electrical equipment also a part of electronic equipment. Even though it's called e-waste, there are some electrical equipment also, which we'll be discussing as we go along. So all these things, when you are finished using or when you're going for a new model, get discarded by the customer. So what is e-waste? First of all, it pertains to electronic and electrical equipment. Short form is EE, because we'll be using this again and again, this term. Second, E is discarded as waste by the customer after its use. So you have the waste generated by individual customers. Waste also gets generated during manufacture or repair or refurbishment of EE by some repair agency or for the manufacturing agency. So electronic waste gets generated not only during production, but also during repair as well as during service life or at the end of service life. Now, very quickly, what does E comprise of? Broadly, they belong to two families, two sets. One is regarding telecom and IT department, IT equipment, I'm sorry. And here it involves laptops, computers, printers, mobile phones, telephone instruments, Wi-Fi, modems, etc., etc. And here the population is very high. Sizes may be very small. And a large number of people are using this, especially mobile phones. And then there's another set called the consumer EE equipment. They consist of TV, don't be surprised, refrigerators, ACs, because all of them have these days electronics inside this, like washing machine, UPS, music system, LED lamps, LED lights rather, CFL, they'll talk about it, mercury vapor. So there are two groups or two sets of EE as shown in the slide. And if you look at what is inside these equipment and you take a family of the equipment and then you look at its composition, what does it contain? 60% is metals. Either they are the body or they are the base or there are some fixtures or inside the equipment, some brackets, etc., etc. So 60% is by weight is metals. Plastics are another 15%. That takes care of 75%. Screens. Now screens are, it can be LED TV screen, it can be an LCD TV screen, it can be a laptop screen, or it can be a desktop computer which has got a cathode ray tube. It has also got a screen. Screens take about 12% of the weight, and the balance 10, 12% or 13% is essentially cables and PCBs and pollutants, etc. So this is what. So it's very easy to remove the metal. It's very easy to remove the plastic. But when it comes to screens and rest of the things, that is a 25% population by weight, I'm sorry, 25% composition by weight. That's where we have various pollutants and hazardous items inside, which we had to take care of from the environmental point of view. So let's go forward. E-waste, as I said, which can be from electrical and electronic equipment. Essentially, the e-waste contains non-hazardous, like I told you, metals, plastic, glass. Some I got wooden cabinets, ceramic. Some I got rubber gaskets, like you may find in the refrigerator, microwaves, etc. So you find there is non-hazardous type of composition in e-waste, and the hazardous ones are what you have to worry about: lead, mercury, arsenic, cadmium, selenium. As we go along, we'll understand where these are appearing and how do we remove them, or how do we prevent them from causing harm to our environment. Let's go to the next slide. If you look at e-waste generated in the world, I'm talking at the world level, 53.6 million tons. That is a huge quantity. That is 536 lakh tons generated all over the world. And only 17% is recycled. That means you are laying your hands on less than 1/5 is waste. 4/5, more than 4/5 waste, we don't know where it is going. The world does not know. It is going somewhere in some landfill. It is going into some ground. It is being broken and thrown away somewhere. The world, the countries do not know. And this is expected to become 750 lakh tons by 2030. It is only growing at a huge rate. So you will have many landfills filled with electronic waste. Obviously, as I told you earlier, they can cause harm. We'll discuss that as we go along. And the highest generation is in China, 100 lakh tons. Of course, here it is written 10.1 million tons. That is 100 lakh tons. USA is 6.9 million. India is a third, 3.2, and then comes Japan, Brazil, etc., Germany, and things like that. So India is already there, the third ranking for having amount of waste in India generated, or it is falling in India. I am using this word very carefully. As we go along, we'll understand what I meant. So India has got a huge lot of waste to cope with. Of course, we've got a large population also. So, but if you look at per capita waste, the highest is Norway. Of course, it doesn't figure in the total waste ranking. UK is about 24 kg. China is about 7+ kgs. And in India, you generate less than 2.5 kgs of waste per head per year. So annual per capita generation in India is very, very low. So our turnover of electronic waste is low, and there's a reason for it. I will tell you. In India, within India, generation is by metros around 80%. Mumbai is the highest, followed by Delhi, then Bangalore, etc. I've shown the percentages there. So when we leave this slide and go to the next slide, India has got a huge quantity of waste to manage, even though our per capita waste is very, very less. Now, why is e-waste growing like this? Why is it growing? There are many reasons, but let me go to the first reason. There are new applications coming in, be it in medical, education, engineering, agriculture, social security, banking, etc. So you find a proliferation in offices, and you find at homes. Even work from home has proliferated some electronic equipment. Things have got duplicated at homes. So these new applications and new work centers have allowed electronic equipment to grow in quantity, even though they are in service, but at someday they will become waste. Second aspect is customer wants newer, compact, and speedy models with improved features. There's a desire for him to work with newer models which are more capable, as I told you earlier. And the service life of an electronic equipment is normally around 7 to 8 years. But in India, it is not so. India, it is much more, because the Indian consumer tends to repair and reuse. He doesn't throw away. It's a positive factor. It reduces the amount of waste generated in India. We cling on to our electronic equipment, thinking that it'll work for some more years. And even if it is, we got another one, we still hold on to the old one without disposing of. That's how our economy works in many spheres. In e-waste, it's a very positive factor that we don't throw it away, but we must be keeping it somewhere in our home, somewhere in our offices. We don't dispose of that often as the rest of the world. Recently, government has created protection-linked schemes for manufacture of electronic equipment in India. So there is a lot of manufacturing taking place in India of electronic goods. As I told you earlier, e-waste gets generated during manufacture also. So e-waste is growing because of manufacture. And in India, it's expected this will grow much more because there is a likely shift of production facilities from China to India. Of course, there's going to Vietnam and Indonesia, etc. But there's likely to come to India in some proportion. So this amount of waste generated by manufacturing plants is also likely to grow. And lastly, the estimates are that e-waste is growing 4% annually, which calls for a very efficient waste management should be set up in the world, of course, but we'll talk about India. Now, I used the word estimate. It's not very clear how much of e-waste is generated in the world or in your country or in your city. There is no way. There is supposed to be a way, but that cannot be very efficient. As we go along, we'll discuss. But the fact is, it's all in estimate. That means if you have produced 1,000 TVs in 2020, by 28, they'll expire in life, and you feel that first year so much will get replaced, second year so much will get replaced, third year so much will get replaced. So there's an estimation made for all equipment by agency which has been tasked with this job by the government, and they say e-waste is roughly so and so. Now, you should be able to collect most of it. And so therefore you require collection centers to be very, very efficient, weigh it and tell you so much of e-waste has come. But that cannot work very efficiently. So the estimate in the world is based on electronic production. 4% is the growth rate of e-waste. And let's look at how do you manage the waste very efficiently. So the tenets of good waste management are, you have to collect it. Whenever somebody wants to dispose of or throw it away or discard it, you should be able to collect it, either formal system, a part of corporations, some scheme, or the central government sponsored some collection scheme, which I'll come to. But don't allow it to go to landfill. You should check it. Before it goes, you have to look at it before you send for landfill. Second, once you have collected it, you should be able to dismantle and separate it. As I told you, wood has to be separated, rubber has to be separated, steel has to be separated, metal has to be separated, and some PCBs will be there, and there will be some lights will be there, fused bulbs will be there. So you have to look at various means. There'll be screens will be there. You have to have someone to separate them because they require different types of processing. No processing is required for wood. Not much of processing required for wood, but there is a lot of processing required for PCB. So there has to be, the next step is you should have processing for the items which you are recovered from after dismantling. And you should be able to reuse if you find something is reusable or recycling. That is anyway a part of the attempt to reduce the waste. So that has to be done. That's a little bit of a technical job. It is already happening in the batteries in India. if you buy a new car battery or a motorbike battery or a UPS battery, you give it to the battery supplier and he takes it away. Where it goes, you do not know, but there are agencies which recycle those batteries, or they remove the lead out of it and give it back to the battery manufacturer. But there is a well-established chain system as far as batteries are concerned. But that sort of efficient system does not exist for electronic equipment at this point of time. So let's go forward. And then you should submit data to authorities. It's a very important aspect, because otherwise you will not know how much you collected, how much you recycled. You don't know. So you expect the people who are working on it to submit the data. There should be a method by which they can submit the data to the concerned authorities. As I talk about the law, you will know who are the concerned authorities. Now let's look at collection dismantling. I'm just going a little more into this because this is a very important aspect, because our customers are the front end of this, who start this discarding process. So there are 5 possible scenarios. The first scenario is you throw it in the garbage. Just put in the waste paper and put it along with kitchen waste or dry waste, or just throw it. Somebody will sift it, keep it separate. Otherwise, it will go to landfill. And it will start polluting groundwater because of the hazardous material in the electronic equipment. So this is one scenario. The second scenario is the customer takes it to a local scrap shop and he says, I don't want this radio, I don't want this very old TV music system. You take it. He tries to dismantle it, separate it, sift it using some labor. They often work in very unsafe ways of doing it. They also cause some pollution to the air and water. And of course, the health of the labor is also at great risk. So let's see some photographs on this. There's a man who's removing all the cathode ray tubes of old desktop computers. They remove it. You can see behind him how many tubes are lying. One side is the PCBs lying. Then he removes the cables to one side. So this is how it is being done by people who pick up all this from various scrap centers, and then there are specialized guys who only do PCB or collection or screens. They remove and then they break the screen to get glass. Then there is another team or another group which just works on PCB. So I presume most of you are familiar with PCB. It's nothing other than printed circuit board. Most of them look green in color. I'm sorry, I have to tell you a little bit of electronics here. You can see in the PCB a whole lot of white dots. They are the connections made. And there are copper tracks underneath this green. The green is like a polymer paint. So underneath there's a lot of copper. So it's a very attractive item which is there in the old PCB, if you can take the copper. And you will see a lot of components are mounted on the other side of the PCB. You can see some on the left side. And many of those components have got gold connections. The end connections are on gold tipped connections. So there is gold, there is silver, and there's copper in this PCB. We'll come back to the PCB a little later, what happens to PCBs when you throw it away. So this is the second scenario. The third scenario is you exchange item for a new one. I told you about batteries. It's happening even for TVs. You go and buy a TV, that man says, I'll take your old TV. What happens to the old TV? You're not worried about. He may dismantle it, or he may give it to a repair guy and you go to a gray market, or he will give it back to the original manufacturer who will utilize the parts out of it and recycle it. So the third and fourth are almost similar scenarios. The old items are taken by the customer to the recycling agent, and where the same thing happens, or he gives to the shop who sold you a new TV and he sends to an agent who's recycling, who may decide to dismantle or he may send back to the manufacturer. There are many equipment where the manufacturer themselves buy back your equipment. The manufacturer takes your TV back, original manufacturer. You need not necessarily buy a new TV from him. He will come and tell him, your TV has gone bad, I don't want it, I'm going for some other company, some other product, please come and take your old TV. He will come and take it. Under what condition does he do it? What are the legal issues? I will share with you. But that is another scenario which may happen. Now let's go forward. So in the processing, there are many steps. I'm going to quickly run through it. There is a sorting, which we already seen. Remove hazardous separate, PCB separate, screen separate. I showed you some photographs on it. Then you reduce the size. So you break down the wood, you break down the metal, you break down the stand, frames, etc. So small pieces will become. And then you want to make the light items different from the heavy items. You use the winnowing technique on a small machine. I hope you understand what is winnowing. When it goes on a conveyor belt at a high speed, the light items fall far ahead. Then there's a magnetic separation to remove the iron out. Now you see, from the scrap of the e-equipment, ferrous items are removed by magnetic separation. The small machine has got a whole lot of magnet, electromagnet, which on a conveyor belt, and all the items which are of iron, which are removed away. The rest of things, plastic and wood, etc., are going past. Then there is an eddy current which removes the metal, because iron is already removed by magnetism. So eddy current removes the other metal. Then there's a density separation for plastic, because plastic will be lighter, so it will fly farther in that, so you'll be able to remove. So these sort of techniques are used in a center, and in fact there is a machine which does all this, which is available in Korea, South Korea, and the machine consists of 5-6 stages where all these things are done. And finally, what you cannot reuse, what you cannot recycle, which has got no value, is sent to the landfill after making sure there are no hazardous items in that. So this is the way processing takes place. India also takes place this, but in India, much of these operations are manual and not automated. A lot of labor works on it. And I will tell you, sometime back I told you, a lot of e-waste falls on India because there is a lot of labor employed in this. And I will tell you why it falls on India. So why should we recycle minerals from e-waste? As I told you, PCBs are having different types of minerals. They are chemically treated, acid washed, and they remove the minerals away. In Korea, what they do is they powder the PCB after removing all the components. They make it into a powder, which has got both plastic as well as copper. I told you there's a lot of copper in this. All the components are removed, so the gold has gone away, the silver has gone away, so only copper is there, and they use extraction of copper by suitable chemical as well as mechanical means. This is an interesting statistic. 1 ton of PCB gives you 1.5 kilos of gold. I'm repeating. 1 ton of PCB gives you 1.5 kilos of gold and 215 kgs of copper. That's a lot of minerals recycling from old PCBs. So if you have PCBs, there is a lot of minerals which you can recycle. Copper also can be taken not only from PCBs, but also from by burning the cable rubber you burn, and then all the copper conductors are taken. It is happening in India in a big way. Mostly informal sector, you will find in open grounds, rubber insulated wires are burned, causing a lot of pollution, of course, in that area. But all the copper is taken away, which is sent for recycling to this. But I just want to share a little bit of data on this. Recycling copper uses 85% less energy. Because if you want to get copper from copper ore, you have to do mining, and then you have to do extraction, and then you have to do processing, then you have to do refinement. All this consumes electricity, a lot of power, a lot of carbonization of the atmosphere. So if you can get some copper from PCBs, maybe a small amount, it does not, you don't spend so much of energy. You only crush it into powder, and then you separate it from the plastic powders. The copper powder is separated. So in many countries, recycling copper, which I told you it's about 200 kgs per ton of PCB comes out, is done in a very scientific manner. Of course, the leaders are, of course, in Europe. Sweden is a leader for this. And in India, some recycling centers have come up for extracting copper from PCBs. Now, come back to a little data. If you want 5 grams of gold, you have to extract 1 ton of ore. Of course, in India means you will have to go to Kolar goldfields. I don't think anything left is there. No gold is left there. But if you extract 1 ton of ore from there, you'll get 5 grams of gold. But you will get 1.5 kgs of gold from 1 ton of PCBs, because all the connections in the PCBs or the ICs, the connectors, various other components are all gold tipped. And there's a method by which you can remove the gold with some acid wash, and then it is chemical cleaning and etc. etc. And you will be able to extract the gold. And in India, we are doing it as well in an informal sector, not so much in the formal sector. So recycling minerals is more energy efficient than fresh mining. Now, this recycling of e-waste has led to a new industry called urban mining. It's called urban mining. You get old electronic equipment and you get silver, gold, and copper, and some other minerals which are used. So let me tell you some examples of where you may be interested to know that you can remove gold and copper, etc., etc. Japan and Bulgaria are the pioneers in this urban mining. All the 5,000 medals of Tokyo Olympics 2020 were made from urban mined gold, silver, and bronze. All the medals. For your information, you may not be readily knowing, a gold medal weighs around 0.5 kg, but it has got only 1.5% of gold, 1.2. The rest all are silver. So when you get a gold medal in the Olympics, it is 1.2% of gold, that is the gold outer layer. It is covered with gold and gold plated, as you can call it, and the rest of it is silver. Silver medal, almost the same weight, it's around 0.5 kg. It's fully silver. And in bronze, it is a mix of copper and zinc. So in Tokyo Olympics, they decided all the gold, silver, and the copper required for bronze will be from e-waste. And they did it. And they had to process 79,000 tons of e-waste to produce these 5,000 medals. So this is how Japan is following now. Of course, they showcase this capability during Tokyo Olympics, but they are in a big way setting up this. Continuing on this e-waste, there are 7 hazardous materials which are found in e-waste. You can see the list: mercury, lead, arsenic, etc., etc. And these are not normally recovered, but you don't want to discharge them into the environment in their original state. So you neutralize them chemically or treat them and then only send to the landfill as per regulations which are adopted by international treaty. So I'm not going to what are the process for these hazardous materials, but there is a very clear protocol for neutralizing them and sending the landfill. This treaty was signed in 1992, and it is today referred as, it's a very commonly referred as Basel Convention. It was held in the city of Basel in Switzerland, and this 1992 convention was signed by 192 countries. But our big brother USA has not signed it yet, even though many countries have joined after 1992. In 1992, it was not 192. As of 2022, there are 192 countries who have signed this convention that they will not allow hazardous materials to go into land. It will not allow the water or air to get polluted. That is, they have signed the treaty. And the revised Basel rules are coming from 2025. We'll be talking more about this, what is the provision which is coming in. But there is a more stringent clause coming into Basel Convention from 2025. There have been some loopholes in the present Basel Convention, and that could be the answer for the statement I made. Waste has been falling on India. Let's go to that. So there has been trans-border movement of hazardous material, even though there's a Basel Convention. Because in Basel Convention, it says you cannot send hazardous material from your country to another country. You cannot. But you can send electronic equipment for repair or recycle, even though it may be waste. It may have some hazardous material, but the equipment may have some hazardous material, but you can send it for recycling or waste or removing the gold from it or copper from it. Now, based on this, many developed countries have utilized this provision, this loophole, to export old electronic items containing hazardous material to other countries. Many countries who have got free trade agreement. UK is pressing for FTA with us. And as a part of FTA, in this free trade, a lot of countries have sent e-waste to developing countries. I'll show a map on this. You see this. US has sent so much to Africa. Europe has sent so much to India. Australia has sent so much to India. So, and from North America, it has gone to China also. You see the brown arrow. So, a lot of developed countries, they couldn't care whether the environment or the landfill in some developing countries is having harmful hazardous item. They send all this waste to other countries, Africa, India, China, etc. Of course, we may have employed a lot of labor in this, but the fact is we have got a lot of e-waste coming as import to India. And you'll be surprised how much we imported. India imported 50,000 tons of e-waste every year. Containers after containers filled with e-waste came to India. Either they came as part of this FTA or they came as a part of recyclable or repairable electronic equipment, mostly from US and EU. So all this e-waste which came to India, I told you India generated its own e-waste. On top of it, import came. So we were number 3 in the world now, the amount of e-waste which we are handling, which is including, it's around 3.1 million tons, I told you. So we have an issue. How do you make sure that this doesn't happen without our knowledge? It's a different issue if you say, okay, bring e-waste, I will process it. That's one way of looking at it. I don't know whether the government is having an open door policy on this or not, but many of this have surreptitiously come into India in the form of repairable equipment, and they are being processed here. So after a lot of prolonged discussion by developing countries, I told you some new rules are coming in 2025. Now, every country wanting to export e-waste has to first pre-process it in their country, reduce the hazardous content as per international regulations, give a certificate which has to be accepted by the receiving country, then only the export can come. So it was not an open door. At least it was an open door from the exporting side because Basel Convention permitted it. Now, from 2025, this is being made very stringent. Why 25? Why not now? Because many developed nations require some more time to make sure they can do pre-processing. They were never doing any pre-processing. They were sending all the junk to Africa and Asia. And they said, now we have to set up this facility. We have to do our own pre-processing, certification, etc., etc. So the Basel Convention treaty has been modified from Jan 2025, less than 2 years from now. So the law in India has become tighter and tighter and tighter. In 2003, it was on hazardous waste. In 2011, first time in India, they said, okay, there's something called e-waste. Let us try and make a method, make some laws and rules, how we can manage it. In 2016, they modified it. Now in 2022, they again modified it, which is coming into force from April 23. So at the moment, it is 2016 rules, but the new rules are going already promulgated. They will come from April 23. I will give a few important aspects of that. Comes into force from April 23. CPCB, Central Pollution Control Board, is the nodal agency for all data. The role of manufacturer of an electronic equipment, refurbisher, recycling agency, all have been very clearly identified in these new rules. There's more about it. I'll come to that. State governments have been, as per this rule, they have to allocate industrial space in their industrial estate for dismantling, recycling, urban mining. You want to do all this? Do it in a proper manner with equipment, machinery, in a fairly safe environment for your workers and your labor, and do it in the industrial estate, not in open spaces. All agencies have to register in CPCB, and they have to upload data as per some format, as per some periodicity. Solar panels can be dismantled only by those specially authorized, because solar panels have got some very specific minerals, and to extract them and possibly recycle them, it's a very expensive process. So the government does not want this process to be set up in many, many places. They have specific agencies where solar panels can be recycled. Solar panels also got a life, about 10 years. So they will go for replacement. They will go as e-waste. So this is a part of the new rule. And of course, plastics and batteries and radioactive waste, etc. They got separate laws. So in 2023, the new rules come. But the most important thing is about manufacturer and the producer of this. Now, there's a difference between manufacturer and producer. You're buying a Samsung TV or a LG TV. The producer is LG. The manufacturer may not be LG. Manufacturer may be some electronic firm in industrial estate in Bangalore somewhere or Hyderabad somewhere by some other name. He has been given the drawings, he has been given the documents, he has been given the components, he assembles it and gives it to LG. So the producer is LG, it is his brand name, it comes in the market. The manufacturer is somebody else. Of course, he generates a manufacturing e-waste, that's a different issue. But the producer is the main person. And we'll touch upon this, what are the responsibilities of producer. And some of you would be surprised, some of the provisions which are already there in the rules. I was not aware of it. I'll share with you in the coming slides. So many states have set up dismantling and recycling capacity in India. You can see it there. I'll show some highlights. There are health to labor, and this I've already talked about. Many city corporations have taken initiatives to make sure they have a electronic based collection. They don't do processing, they collect it and then they send it to concerned people, maybe after a little dismantling. I'll show you what is there in Bangalore. It's called a waste wise program. You see this? This has already been set up in Bangalore. This is a kiosk. It's a drop-in box. You don't like your mobile, you just put in the box. You don't like your laptop, your keyboard, something else, you can put it inside. They have been installing this in different parts of the city. If you want to dispose of electronic waste in a very diligent manner, in a very responsible manner, you're doing it. You're not throwing it into garbage and allowing it to go to the landfill without processing. So this is what has been done in Bangalore. Pune also, I understand something has started. Ahmedabad also has started, but they have got collection centers. The corporations have got collection centers, not drop-in boxes. There are 400 dismantling centers set up in India with a capacity of 10 lakh tons. Now look at this. India generates waste of almost 30 lakh tons, but we got collection centers with capacity of only 10 lakh tons, 10.6. So there's a mismatch already there. You can't handle the amount of e-waste which you're already generating in our country. But apart from that, we have already set up 400 dismantling centers. They are in different parts of India. Some Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Uttar Pradesh, they all have a lot of centers set up. You can see in the map, which is all in red or maroon, they have maximum number of centers. You'll be surprised to see Kerala has got very less number of centers as compared to Rajasthan and Gujarat and Andhra Pradesh and Karnataka, etc. Now, we have been able to process or collect and dismantling, which is pre-processing, only 22% of the 10 lakh tons which we collected in 1920. In 2019-20, we collected about 10 lakh tons, which is almost close to our maximum capacity. We could dismantle and do only 22% of this quantity which has come. We couldn't do more than that. So it is piling up in different collection centers because we are not able to do it in a speedy manner. Now, I told you about manufacturers made more accountable through EPR scheme. So I will just tell you what the EPR scheme is. This is called Extended Producer's Responsibility. This actually started in South Korea in 2003. Today in South Korea, 70% of e-waste is collected by producers themselves. In India, corporations, informal sector, CPCB sectors, all put together collect only 22% of e-waste generated. But in Korea, 70% is collected by the producer. The LG company collects all the LG items, old LG items, 70%. Similarly, for some other electronic company, maybe Philips, maybe Siemens, maybe some other company. So they have made the manufacturer or the producer, under whose brand name it goes, responsible for collection. How are they doing it? Let's see the way they have done it. We also tried to copy it in 2016 into India, the same model, but we are not picked up. This policy has not been showing results in the last 5-6 years, or almost 7 years now. We are not being able to do it. Every producer is supposed to view a take-back agreement. Please remember this. When you buy a TV, a LG TV, the LG company is supposed to take it back or exchange it with a new one if you want a new one to be exchanged, or refund the deposit which he has already catered for this discarding. This is as per rule. I bought many TVs in the last 5-6 years. I did not know We all go to a TV shop and buy it, and you don't see the LG man there. But as per rules, the producer is supposed to implement this from 2016 onwards in India. Either the producer can do it himself, or he can have his agencies in different parts of the country who will do on his, he can outsource this task to somebody else. Now, he can outsource, as I told you. The old equipment he is supposed to take back. Period. You don't have to buy a new one from him. He is supposed to take back the old TV from you, old washing machine from you. And the target for this scheme was 10% in the first year, 10% of the equipment which he has sold 1 year back. And it grows up to 70% in the 7th year. Because you know the life is around 9 years. So up to 7 years, every year, 10% you expect to be becoming waste. The quantity is decided based on the sales. All this data is available, but I don't think these producers are fulfilling this rule earnestly with the customer. As of December 22, there are more than 2,300 producers registered in CPCB website. When you get time, go to CPCB website, go for producers responsibility. You want to see the list of producers? You will see a list of producers starting with iPhone, Apple. And all the companies are Toshiba, LG, somebody else, all are there. They have all registered, they have all agreed to this fact of either they take back or they exchange if you want a replacement, or they refund the deposit which they have taken from you for the post end of life support. Just remember this, because you can be a more well-informed or a better informed customer when you buy an electronic equipment next time. At least ask him who's giving this cover. And before buying an item, it may be a good idea to visit CPCB website to see whether the man has signed this 2016 rules, which necessitates that he has to do this. So we have to tackle it from many fronts. Customers have to be better informed, as I told you, so they can demand on the producers. The producers have to be efficient, and so on and so forth. The processing center, collection center, etc., etc. But there's a mantra which we have to follow as far as this waste is concerned. That is, minimize the waste. Don't proliferate unnecessarily your electronic equipment. If you think you can manage with what you're having, or you want a newer model, then make sure the older one which you dispose of, do it in the proper manner. Now, this is the mantra. It's called the 4 R's mantra. You reduce your consumption, that means buy only what you want. Or second, if you can reuse it. How do you may not use it. Give it to someone who is a collection center. He will send to the gray market. Somebody else will buy your phone and use it. Of course, you will delete all the data which is there in the phone before you give it. Similarly for your laptop and for other electronic equipment. Third R is recycle. You don't do it. There's an agency which is nominated by the government. There are over large number of centers set up all over India. They will recycle it. Some will extract gold, some will extract silver and copper, of course. And they will be also recovering useful items from this. So this is what you do before you send it to landfill. Now, it may be a good idea for the design people to design future electronic equipment to minimize the harm on environment. That means you select only materials which are not causing harm, minimize the content of hazardous materials or pollutants. So that is, of course, for the designer. It is not, we can't discuss this at this point of time, but all the electronic manufacturing people can practice circular economy. I don't know whether all of you are familiar with this term, but I will try and explain to you in a simple manner. There is something called linear economy and there's something called circular economy. Linear economy is you buy an item, use it, throw it. That is linear. Then you don't care about it, you go and buy another one. But in circular economy, what happens is you buy an item, use it. When it goes bad, you try and repair it, use it again, or give it to some collection center. He will give to the gray market, somebody else will use it, but your item is still being used by someone. If it is still not working all right, repair is not possible, you try to refurbish it. It may not be possible for a mobile phone to be refurbished, but it could be definitely possible for a washing machine to be refurbished. There are many people who refurbish refrigerators as well and reuse it. So you remanufacture it or refurbish it. If that is also not possible, you recycle the items, take out the items from that equipment, reuse it. Maybe a motor, maybe a battery, maybe gold, maybe silver, whatever it is, and the balance you send to landfill. So the circular economy is something which the government has to facilitate. That means you have to make sure there is a collection center who will look at it and then say, oh, this can be go to gray market, or he can send to a processing center who will try to take copper, gold, silver, etc. So all those layers of circular economy activities have to be facilitated either by the government or by the respective manufacturer. All this definitely happen within a factory. If LG is having a factory for TV, or LG is authorized somebody else to manufacture TV, all these layers of what I told you, recycling and refurbishment takes place as a different activity. So circular economy is something which I explained to you. So this has to be implemented as much as possible. So now I come to my conclusions. So in the last 40 years, the new applications of digital technology and the technological advancements which have made the equipment more versatile and compact and appealing to customer has led to frequent replacement by customers. You can't blame the customer for it, but I'm saying this is happening. So there is more waste. So electronic equipment needs to be, it intrinsically contains hazardous materials. It will be discarded with keeping environment in mind. As I told you, collection, dismantling, segregation, processing, recycle, all this needs to be done in a proper manner. Then only you can check the 4% growth, 4% unwanted growth in e-waste world over. We don't have really the figure in India because how much e-waste you're collecting with great difficulty I got for 1920. But if I'll go back to the earlier times, the data is very, very vague. It's not very clear. So I can't tell you what is the rate at which e-waste is growing in India. Now that CPCB is collecting data, maybe you'll have data in the coming years because he will tell you how much is the waste growing. But even CPCB does not have enough data to give a trend. He has got data just for 2 years. With that, it's not possible to say there is a growth rate. And we have to implement the e-waste management rules, and producers of equipment have to be held responsible for the post-service life. This is a takeaway, I think, for many of you. Just be aware of it. There is a responsibility of the producer who has to fulfill this towards the customer. And of course, the quantity of waste is based on data generated on CPCB. India has been collecting more than the global average of 17%. India has collected about 22% of waste. This is primarily because it is happening in informal sector. So there are a lot of low skilled labor which is being employed to collect this and then use it to segregate and do some dismantling. While processing may require a little bit of skill. The CPCB, which is the agency which I told you, has now formulated a method by which he can track consignments of e-waste, because e-waste comes to collection centers. From their collection center, it goes to many processing centers. Some processing centers for PCB, some processing centers for some type of batteries, some other processing center is for maybe for solar cell panels. So he sends consignments to different processing centers. The nearest, of course, he will send. And there is no way they're able to put all this data together. So they are trying to do some codification. They are trying to track it through some barcoded method by which you will know how much each collection center has been able to send to different people. And therefore, you may have a better data of how much e-waste you have generated. It's a good figure to know for people to look at how much you're not collected and how much you're not processed. Because if you're not collected and not processed, that means it has gone back to environment. The uncollected one, of course, it can be lying in some small percentage in the homes of our customers in some attic or top of some cupboard where it may be lying. But more of it would be in the environment and landfill. So we need to imbibe the mantra of 4 Rs as much as possible so that we can control this crisis, which is growing definitely world over. And India also, it has grown partially because of the unregulated imports which have happened, because there was a loophole in the convention. You could send for repair, and therefore we landed up importing it. Maybe from 2025 that did not happen. So this is something which I want to share with you today, that e-waste is a menace which is growing, and we are all very happy when the equipment is working. But when the equipment has gone bad, then we are not sure how to dispose it of very, very efficiently and very sensibly without causing any harm to our environment. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your patient hearing. With that,